Hi guys, and welcome to Piano and Keyboard Artist, where we discuss the artists related to pianos, keyboards and synthesizers. And today we're talking about Nick Rhodes from Duran Duran. So the reason I decided to call this video Nick Rhodes, Understated Genius, is because that is exactly what Nick Rhodes is to me. Understated. And that's not only his music, but also his character. And what I mean by that is, if you listen to Duran Duran's music, which is iconic, Duran Duran's music to me, it really is the soundtrack of the 80s. And, you know, you heard it everywhere. It was purely international and very, very popular. So no matter where you were in the world in the 80s, Duran Duran dominated the airways. Duran Duran always had a very strong vision and philosophy. They knew exactly how they wanted their music to be perceived, how they wanted it to sound, and how they wanted to look on stage. And the attention to detail was very, very good. And, you know, combine that with the fact that they were very good looking. Simon Le Bon is a great frontman and vocalist. The production, the songs were very, very good. Is all these reasons which made them, you know, the biggest band in the world at some point in the 80s. The Duran Duran sound was no accident. They had a theory, and it was incorporating disco, funk, with a bit of German electronics, you know, thrown in the mix. So they knew exactly what they were doing, and they did manage to present themselves in a way that no one had done before. Of course, the New Romantics were around at the time, but just what gave Duran Duran the edge was not only their look, the fact that they knew where they were going, they were very good looking, but the songs really were, I feel, what gave Duran Duran the edge. Because, you know, we've seen it in the case of, I'm not going to mention any names, loads of acts around about that time, and you know who failed, and whether that be down to bad management or, you know, whatever, Duran Duran really did tick all the boxes, and every move they made, they just seemed to be at the right place at the right time. So it's like synchronicity was on their side. Now, Duran Duran is a huge subject. It's a super group. They've been going for years. But as I say in this video, we want to focus on Nick Rhodes, who, as I said, is the understated genius. And as I said, what I mean by that is, if you asked most people, you know, Duran Duran fans or not, who is Nick Rhodes? They'd go, oh, he's the keyboard player for Duran Duran. And as I say, you'd be correct in saying that, but I'm here to tell you, if you dig deeper, and indeed the more I've researched, you will find that there is so much more to Nick Rhodes as far as his input towards Duran Duran. I would go so far as to say that Nick Rhodes to Duran Duran is kind of like Alan Wilder to Depeche Mode.
Warning! Warning! Alan Wilder, fanboy alert! Warning!
I'm just drawing a comparison between Alan Wilder and Nick Rhodes. I think there is relevance to that. Now, the Duran Duran catalogue is huge. It's very vast and varied. They've been around for a long time, and they still are a very current act and, you know, managed to produce very, very good music. They obviously did have their problems, like a lot of big bands did, and they split up due to musical differences, whatnot. But at the core of Duran Duran, and I don't want to put any member more important than any other. Now, at the core of this, you always had Simon and Nick, you know, through the different lineups. So I think Nick has always been there for Simon. Now, as I say, it's not to say that Nick Rhodes is any more important than any of the members, but the way I understand it, and if you look at the way they work in the studio, every member, so we got Simon, we got the three Taylors, the three unrelated Taylors, and we got Nick Rhodes. They all have obviously their role. But I feel that, and I believe I'm correct in saying this, that Nick really has a huge input on the actual, you know, the studio side of it, you know, the production. I really feel he has like an overview, whereas all the other members, obviously they are great musicians. They all seem to, in my opinion, contribute their part to the puzzle, which is Duran Duran. But I really feel that it is Nick Rhodes, with his knowledge of music and synthesis and composition and everything, that he's kind of like the like the core that pulls all the pieces together and really has a huge input on the sound and their success. I would actually go so far as to say that if Nick Rhodes left Duran Duran, they would lose their edge, a lot like Depeche Mode have lost their edge since Alan Wilder left.
Warning! Warning! Alan Wilder, fanboy alert! Warning! Warning!
Nick Rhodes talks very fondly of how he always wanted to be in a band. Him and John, were friends. And it was only, I think, at about the age of 17 that Nick actually got into keyboards and synthesizers, because at the time, synthesizers were very expensive in those days. And I think the first one that Nick bought was a synthesizer called the Wasp, and a little black and yellow contraption. And that was how he got into synthesizer music and, synthesis. And he talks about the Jupiter 4 being sort of like the first synthesizer that he really got his teeth into, and that was used all over the first Duran Duran album. And the lead sound can clearly be heard on Planet Earth, which is... Obviously, I'm just demonstrating this on a piano sound. The Jupiter 4 arpeggiator sound can be distinctly heard all over the song Rio, which is an iconic part of that song. Nick goes on to talk how the Roland Jupiter 8 is one of his all-time favorite synthesizers, just the sound, the warmth, and he did talk how that Jupiter 8 also was all over the Rio album. So Nick Rhodes' contribution to Duran Duran should not be understated, and I know on the surface, if you looked at them at a live performance, you would see he's behind the keyboards, and because of the nature of keyboards and the way we play them, keyboardists often don't really stand out in live performances, because it's a very static instrument, because you're kind of stuck behind it and you play it. You can't kind of go out in front and rock out on a guitar. So in those kinds of bands, it's always the singer and the drummers, the guitarist, those very sort of animated members that get all the attention. That is, of course, unless you get yourself a keytar, which is never a good idea. Nick Rhodes is a very confident musician, a very confident character. He's got nothing to prove. He's very functional. He's there. And as I say, to the person looking at him, you might think, oh, what's he doing? But I'm here to tell you that there's a lot going on behind the scenes, not only live, but also in the studio. I get the feeling that if anything ever went wrong on stage and there was kind of like a power cut, I get the feeling everyone would kind of turn and look to Nick and go, Nick, what's going on? And he's really calm. He'd say, don't worry, boys. I've got this. Everyone remain calm. And coming on to Nick Rhodes' character, some people have accused him of being a bit snobbish and a little bit like a prince. I don't see it that way. I think he's a very classy, very sophisticated guy. And I've often said that if Nick Rhodes wasn't a human, this is a bit random, if he was an animal, he'd be a cat. Yeah, if Nick Rhodes was an animal, he'd be a cat like my cat, Lily Blofeld. He'd be a big, white, fluffy Persian cat. Yes, really calm and collected. Nick Rhodes has talked on interviews about his disapproval of sort of like the macho rock scene. I mean, I'm personally also not a fan of that. Yeah, dude, the rock scene, yeah, that rock, yeah, macho rock. And coming back to the Nick Rhodes is like a cat. This is a bit random, but when you look at dogs, and they're barking, and then you'll see a cat on the sofa going, meow, meow. That's Nick Rhodes, whereas the dogs are kind of like the rock stars. Yeah, man, let's go rock and roll, yeah. Yeah. Nick Rhodes is the big, fluffy, white Persian cat going, just calm down, you simpletons. Nick Rhodes has nothing to prove. He's got tremendous style, great dress sense. He's very handsome. Back in the 80s when they had their sort of new romantic image, they were very pretty. There was a very androgynous look, and it was very much influenced by Bowie and those stars. in the new romantic stage, there was this, it was almost like, how pretty can we make a man look? And they were very handsome, very pretty men, and they looked like princes. And the women were just insane about them. Interesting on this channel, if I look at my traffic and my statistics, because we talk about Depeche Mode a lot, I'd say 65%, probably even up to 70% of my audience are men, male. And it's interesting when you go to a Duran Duran concert. I watched a concert they did in 2017 here in London, and it's just women, screaming women. I'm hoping this video will bring a few more ladies to the channel. But Duran Duran definitely seem to have a very, very big female following, and that's because they were very, very good looking, and their music was very sensational. If you compare them to a fellow band from Birmingham at the time, like UB40. UB40 was singing about being on the dole and being unemployed and, that kind of stuff. Whereas Duran Duran was really all about sensationalism and, Rio and living the high life and, sex, drugs and rock and roll. So it was real escapism. To further point out Nick Rhodes' disdain and disapproval for the macho rock scene, he talks in an interview how in the 80s, when the band sort of split up for a while, the two Taylors, Andy and John, went on to join Robert Palmer to form a supergroup called Power Station. Some like it hot, da da da, and I don't know the words. Da 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 da, dum dum da 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 dum dum. And Nick goes on to say something like, and it was everything that I despise. Clunky guitar solos, big fat clunky drum sounds. Oh, dreadful. Nick Rhodes is a classy guy, so yeah, he was always against that macho rock scene. I also remember him talking in an interview how, in the formation of Duran Duran, how when they were talking about how they formed it, they had a clear idea. As I said, it was combining elements of funk, disco with some German electronics and great songwriting and melodies. He said something along the lines of, we wanted to show people that you could do it with style and you didn't have to come on with your torn jeans and your guitar and your chains and your axe, something like that. So really having a go at the sort of macho rock scene. All the members of Duran Duran are very stylish, but a lot of the fans have kind of given praise to Nick Rhodes as being the sort of most stylish. As I say, Nick has tremendous input on Duran Duran. It's more than just his part as a keyboard player, as what a lot of people think. He has a huge part in the album sleeves, the attention to detail. He's just got an eye for what works. And I don't think a lot of people realize how important Nick Rhodes is to Duran Duran. He is far more than just a keyboard player. Coming back to what I said about Nick Rhodes being understated, you get the feeling that he's got nothing to prove. He's happy to just have his input, but as you dig deeper, you realize, wow, he is contributing so much. And their catalogue's huge, but if we look at songs like Planet Earth, if we listen to songs like View to a Kill, where he's got his... what's like... I just love the bass line to A View to a Kill, by the way. What I'm illustrating here is a song like A View to a Kill, which is a song that kind of, to me, just like defines the 80s. I love the video where they're on the Eiffel Tower. But a song like View to a Kill, it's got lots of obvious, keyboard synthesizer sounds. The dun 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 dun. Songs like Union of the Snake, Don't Say a Prayer for Me Now, Save It Till the Morning After, that doom 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 doom. So there are songs like that have real sort of obvious keyboard parts in them. Also thinking of that song, what's it? All She Wants Is. It's got that. Spend your money on the corner now. Those are very obvious ones, but what I'm trying to point out here is the songs where the keyboard parts are not obvious, they're still there. I'm thinking of a song like Ordinary World. It starts off with that beautiful sort of like warm pad sound. You know, that's Nick Rhodes, obviously. Songs like The Reflex, da la la la, the Reflex, ba-dum bum bum. I'm pointing out that the obvious sounds that you don't hear, they're there. And even in songs like My Immaculate Dream, May Breath and Skin, I've been waiting for you, Sigh with a home tattoo, happy birthday to you, was created for you. Now on the surface, that song, it's got that, it's kind of like a phaser kind of guitar sound. Now even though that song on the surface is very sort of guitar and drum sounding, there is a lot of synthesizer work in the background. So what I'm trying to point out is, guys, there is a lot of subtlety in Nick Rhodes, not only in his character and his persona, where he's, you know, he's not in your face and, hey man, look at me, yeah. He's kind of like, oh yes, just think about this. I am a big white flamboyant pussycat. Blah. With a catalogue as vast and varied as Duran Duran's, there are so many things we can talk about, and indeed we will do a lot more videos on them. One of their songs that I love, which really comes to mind now, is that song, The Chauffeur. For a lot of the synthesis in that song, Nick used the Roland SH2 and the Roland ESQ 100. The song, The Chauffeur, along with its haunting chord progressions, subject matter, and the video, it's so sexy, but in a classy way. You know, it's not like boom, 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 get your tits in my face, yo, yo, that kind of sexy. Cut! It's just very sexy in a very artsy kind of way. And Duran Duran were unashamedly artsy. And I feel that Nick Rhodes is definitely the most artsy, artistic, sort of like artsy. He's sort of like a prince from the old 1800s. Yes, I'm very classy. But if we look at The Chauffeur, behind the top planes, the glides are moving, all looking for a new place to drive. Then it comes onto the chorus, which is, and the sun slips down, bedding heavy behind, and the front of your dress all shadowy line, and the throbbing engine beats in time with your beating heart. That is a beautiful song. And once again, when you take a song like that and you just strip it down to just piano chords, you can hear how brilliant the song is. There's no bullshit in, you know, with Duran Duran's music. To me, they're a proper band with proper songs. And because they write proper songs, you can strip all the electronics, all the smoke and mirrors, and all the electronics away and just play it on a piano or acoustic guitar, and you still have brilliant songs. Right, guys, and that concludes my first video on Duran Duran. As I say, I wanted to focus more on Nick Rhodes, but obviously, inevitably, we're going to speak about the band and the bigger picture as well. I'd like you to leave your comments below. Let me know what you think of Duran Duran, and let me know what you think of Nick Rhodes. Also, if you could leave me some comments as to, you know, what would you like me to elaborate on further videos. As I say, because this is a piano, keyboard, artist, and synthesizer series, we like to focus really on, you know, pianos, keyboards, and synthesizers. And of course, because Duran Duran does feature keyboards, synthesizers quite heavily, that does mean that Duran Duran qualifies to be spoken about on this channel. Guys, thank you as always. Please hit that subscribe button, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Take care of yourselves.